Welcome, folks. Our webinar today is entitled People-Powered Seed, Cooperative and Community Models. I'm so glad you could be here. My name is Steph Hughes, and I'm the Regional Program Manager in Atlantic Canada for the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security. We are a program of seed change. I will be your host today, while my colleague Becca Ivanoff will be your tech host. So if you have any tech issues, please reach out to her in the chat. We're talking today about alternative seed pathways, and we're hearing from some wonderful people, some wonderful humans behind the seeds. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the Indigenous seed keepers whose care, knowledge, and stewardship have made the crop diversity that we all benefit from today possible. Across Turtle Island and around the world, Indigenous seed keepers have preserved seeds, nurtured varieties, and carried forward stories, practices, and traditions, even in the face of colonization and ongoing inequities. Indigenous care of seed, Indigenous seed stewardship is not always explicitly addressed in our webinars and events, but it underwrites not only everything we'll be talking about today, but also all of the work that we do as a program. Through their care of seeds, Indigenous seed keepers sustain traditional crop varieties, protect food systems, pass on cultural knowledge, and support the health, resilience, and self-determination of their communities, transforming seeds into tiny little change agents. So since last year, we've been offering webinars on this theme of where does your seed come from? And for our team at the Bauta Initiative, this question has been a really rich exploration of seed systems from a diversity of perspectives. So far, we have examined global seed systems for our webinars on hybrid seed production and sourcing for northern latitudes. We've looked at more regional and national systems for our webinars on modern open pollinated seed breeding and Canada's field crop system. As one of the last webinars in this series, today we're going to shift our focus a little bit. And instead of asking, where does our seed come from? We're going to be asking, where could our seed come from? If we had the opportunity, the means, perhaps the bandwidth to explore alternative seed systems and alternative seed sources, where could we direct our inquiries and what would we prioritize? We're going to learn today about some of the seed co-ops and companies who are working with seed, but also through seed as a channel to honor culture and personal histories, and to work in community with folks who are interested in seed systems that prioritize collaboration, transparency, diversity, and sovereignty. Today, we'll be joined by 3 speakers from Canada, the US, and Europe who will share about their seed work in these kinds of systems. So welcome Arzeena, Christina, and Owen. We're going to do a round of intros with all 3 presenters, starting with Arzeena. I'll have you all introduce yourselves and also introduce us to one of your favorite seeds. Once we've done that, we'll circle back to presentations. So Arzeena, please unmute yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and your seed.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Arzeena Hamir, and I'm zooming into you from the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation on the east coast of Vancouver Island. One of my favorite seeds is, I think, one of the first ones I started saving here on my farm, and it's a cantaloupe or a melon seed I call Hope Melon. And it was given to me by a farmer from Prince George. And for those of you who don't know where that is, it's quite northern in BC and is not necessarily an area where you would think of can grow melon. So it's a short season melon. And I thought I'll give you some more background on that during my presentation. But I was so intrigued that I started growing it and saving it on my farm. And it's a lovely, juicy cantaloupe that has lots of people raving about it.
Amazing. Hope Melon, I love it. Thank you, Arzeena. Christina, you're up next. Would you like to unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself and one of your favorite seeds?
So I live in the north of Germany on a Demeter farm, 360 hectares, with 20 hectares of vegetable, and I have my breeding activities here integrated in the farm or garden organism. And I work in the association of Kultursaat with the Bingenheimer seed company and working on a whole range of crops. And one of my first varieties I registered was a carrot, Salvita. And now it's a quite famous carrot because the Völkel, I don't know if you knew them, it's juice makers. They are known all over Europe, but also I think in the world they are quite big. And since they changed from hybrid to OP varieties in their vegetable juices, they sell now 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times more juice because the juice is much more tasty. And the main variety of the carrot and the vegetable juice is the Solvita. But I could speak also about the broccoli because since 20 years we work on broccoli, and it is very, very difficult to have open pollinated broccoli suitable for professional gardening. And a few years ago I registered Rasmus and now Flores, and they are not so perfect as you would like as a professional gardener, but you can market them. Yeah, they are marketable and they have 80–90% harvest, so it's quite successful. Yeah, so far perhaps. Yeah.
Wonderful. And did you mention the broccoli variety name? I missed it.
Rasmus and Flores.
Rasmus. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina.
Yeah.
Over to you, Owen. Tell us a bit about yourself and one of your favorite seeds.
Hi, I'm Owen Taylor. I am based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States. That's kind of in the mid-Atlantic, East Coast. Traditionally, it's Lenni Lenape territory originally. And I am one of the founders of TrueLove Seeds, a seed company that started in 2017. My partner and I started it coming out of the food sovereignty movement, and its focus is on preserving culturally important seeds and working with farmers who are doing just that to populate our seed catalog and reconnect people to their traditional seeds while they're in the diaspora. So I'll tell you more about that. Oh, and my favorite seed today is often my favorite seed. It's not from my own lineage. I will mention some of those in my presentation, but it's a celosia. If you know the ornamental plant, it's an edible celosia that's eaten in West Africa called efoshoko in the Yoruba language. I'm probably saying it a little bit wrong. Efoshoko. And it's a beautiful plant. It's heat-loving green. It's in the spinach family, as all celosias and amaranths are. And it came to us from a farmer who was asked to grow it for a Liberian customer at his market. And it's become one of the cornerstones of our West African seed collection in our catalog. In our West African customer base is growing exponentially because of the ability to find these crops from home. And it's my favorite today because it was featured in the Philadelphia Flower Show. We worked closely with a high school, an environmental high school that grew many of our seeds that were connected to their students' lineages. And it just was a star of the show for me. So many of the plants that they grew there were beautiful, but this one was front and center. And it was cool to see this predominantly African-American school reconnect to their West African heritage through one of the plants in our catalog. We also grow it every year in our yard now. My partner and my son are also African-American, and so it's become a cool way for our family to connect with that plant as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, all three of you, about your favorite seeds. I'm going to stop my screen share now, Arzeena, and invite you to begin your presentation as you are able.
Awesome. Well, I'm incredibly humbled to be giving a presentation alongside these folks today. I'm going to talk a little bit about seed saving on a market garden. I'm a market gardener first. I think that's how I see myself, but also a seed saver. So yeah, I will be probably coming from a slightly different perspective, but hopefully one that's accessible. Let me just try. So I'm just a little bit about me. So I grew up in the suburbs of Vancouver in a city called Richmond, but I very much wanted to study agriculture, primarily to do community development work. I went to the University of Guelph and received my bachelor's science in crop science degree, but I worked internationally for about a decade. Worked in Thailand, in India, got some time to spend in Jamaica, Bangladesh, and then came home in the late 90s and became the staff agrologist for what was then called Territorial Seeds Canada, but then changed its name while I was there to West Coast Seeds. And for those who don't know, it's probably one of the largest, seed houses in Western Canada. But it is a seed house. It does not grow its own seed, like many of the other larger companies across Canada. So I got to see kind of the back end of the seed industry while I was working there. And it may or may not have impacted and influenced the how and why I grow seed now. But yeah, I did get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly working there. In 2012, my husband and I, we moved our family to Vancouver Island, to the Comox Valley, primarily to start a farm, a certified organic farm, to feed our community. And yeah, that's primarily where my passion lives. So in the summertime, we are at the farmers market every Saturday. And so this is, something that like what you'll often see. We grow a huge variety of vegetables, and we have. And interestingly, my husband and I were in our mid 50s now, and we are actually starting to shrink what we grow personally. And we formed a cooperative, a marketing cooperative, to support new farmers to enter into farming and enable them to use the infrastructure that we already had developed. We've got our farm is 26 acres in total, 7 acres in production. Not all of that is in veg, but we've got the coolers, the wash station, the delivery truck, all of that is there. And so we are now working with 4 other farmers and selling product cooperatively at our farmers market. So now we have the same kind of diversity, but it's not necessarily all from our farm, which Neil and I absolutely love. Because I have to say, my back and my knees after 20 years of vegetable production are very happy. Neil and I primarily focus on the perennials that we have. And then I do seed saving as one of my passion projects. So in the winter months, this is my husband, Neil. Our community has a farmers market that runs 50 weeks of the year. And so that really encourages growers to try and, push the shoulder season especially, and to grow crops as long as they can. We have our community is just a wonderful plethora of farmers, a lot of meat producers, cheese, like we have quite a lovely mix, and so if you don't have greens through the winter time, there still are enough vendors to keep our farmers market going. So this is often what you will see in the winter months. But like any small market garden, the majority of our work is done by hand. We do have tractors, but primarily like the weeding, the harvesting, all of that is done using manual labor. We did at our peak have about 3 staff working during the season. And so, these are some older photos of staff just doing harvesting and bringing it in to wash and for market. All of the picking, for those of you who grow pickling cucumbers, the pain of looking for the right size of pickling cucumbers and making sure that your customers have what they want. So I don't think this is new for any market growers. this is just kind of what it looks like during the summer months. But as I mentioned, Neil and I primarily focus on our perennials. We have an acre of blueberries, half an acre of black currants, an acre of hazelnuts, and a few other perennials as well. So we're focused now on 10. And by doing that, I'm now able to concentrate a bit more on seed production, which is something, as I mentioned, that I love. So, one of the ones that I wanted to kind of highlight, because a lot of market growers do grow garlic, and that is overall one of my favorite crops to grow. And we have been growing this variety of garlic for probably about 10 years now. And it came to us labeled as Susan Delafield. I have now learned that that was actually music. Susan Delafield and music, I think, are the same variety. But over time, market gardeners and home gardeners, I think, often will do this. They are seeing, a variety adapt to their own conditions. And so one of the reasons I love growing Susan Delafield / music is that it is way more resistant to the heavy rains that we get here in BC on the West Coast. I have tried many other varieties, and the ability to withstand waterlogged soils, this music just does not have, there's no other competition really. Red Russian, yes, I'll admit to that, but I just really love this variety. And, over time, I do think it's adapted to our farm, and, we do save our own seed and then replant that. And so in terms of seed saving, maybe not something that people necessarily consider, but I think garlic is a really great, especially for a market gardener that has not tried seed saving. Like, this is an easy thing to do. I'm just going to tell a little bit more story about this Hope melon. So my friend Andrew Adams farms at Hope Farm in Prince George. It is in, he has, I think, is zone 3B. So quite a winter, very onion, and we are in zone 7, I believe, 7B. So we don't get the types of winters that Andrew gets. And he also grows on one of the worst classes of soil. I think he's got a class 7 soil. He's just an amazing farmer, and he has developed varieties of all kinds of vegetables. But he came for a visit one winter, and he and I had some good chats. And he gave me the seed of this melon that he had developed, and I was, first of all, so excited to see an open pollinated melon. And so tried it out, and that very first year, it grew amazingly. It's a melon that once it's ripe, it slips off of the vine, and I thought, you know what, I need to start saving this seed. And that year, and this is the nice thing about melon, is you wait till it's fully ripe. So I sold them as cut halves because I wanted all of the seed. And people actually really liked that because they could see that the inside was ripe and it was juicy. And so, we made a lot of money that year because each half I sold for $4. Now this was 10 years ago, and people didn't balk because it was fairly new also in our community. That was the other thing. I don't think many people realize that we could grow melon. We don't normally get hot summers on the east coast of Vancouver Island. So this variety did super well. It's short season, and I was able to sell the melon itself and save the seed. It was just a great experience overall, and I love this variety. Now, an interesting thing happened about 3 years ago, I think. Andrew had a fire at his farm, and the fire actually burned down his seed storage area. And so he lost all of his developed varieties plus his market garden seed. And I was one of the only ones that had his melon seed. And it was just so like, oh, to be able to give it back to him and have him have that melon and not have lost it was just, I mean, I still get very teary and emotional about this. So, here is one of the huge benefits of seed saving, and having multiple small farms save seed is just um, the the resilience and the insurance that happens when you have growers across your region, keeping these varieties. So I'm so glad Andrew has Hope Melon back, and we continue to grow this because it's a melon that I love and my customers love too. Just to show you the inside of Hope Melon. It's delicious. And it was interesting to see like people, because it's vine ripened, we're unused to like the softer texture of fully ripe melon because they were so used to the gross supermarket melon that is just hard and tastes like cardboard. But the juiciness and the sweetness won them over. So yeah. Like I mentioned, we have like a fairly mild summer. I mean, if it gets above 29 degrees in our community, like people start, heading to the rivers and just complain. The complaints start. um, so for the seeds that I save, I try and use or save seeds that can be grown, for instance, like this jalapeno, it's early jalapeno. Outside without a greenhouse, because not every home gardener has a greenhouse, and that's primarily who I am targeting my seeds for is for home gardeners. So yay, the ability to grow a pepper outside and still get jalapenos, for example. That's certainly a bonus for me. So that's one of the things that I do try and do is select seed that grows well in our climate, and doesn't require too much coddling, I'll say. The other thing that I am also experimenting with here on the east coast of Vancouver Island for the last, I would say, 4 years at least, and prior to that as well, we've been facing some very difficult drought conditions. We're primarily, our house and everything, we depend on well water. And many farms have seen over the last, especially 4 years, wells starting to run dry. And if you don't have some kind of water storage, it can be very, very dicey growing food, and especially if you don't have a water license. And that is something that's fairly new, started in 2016 in BC, and not all market gardeners that I know have a water license. And so dry farming is something that a bunch of us are experimenting with and trying to see if we can get a crop to grow with an initial watering at transplanting time, and I do a watering maybe a week later, and then that is it. They get mulched, and then they just have to depend on if it rains, great, but if not, it has to be whatever water is still in the soil. And so we like the drought conditions I'll mention, like in 2 years ago, I think it was, we had 20 weeks with no rain. And substantial, like, so it's not like it's hot, but we don't get those thunderstorms that I remember, in Ontario. It just never rained. And so these are the conditions that we're starting to see. And for my seed saving, I'm really trying to find those varieties that can withstand growing in a condition that maybe, they're not going to get supplemental watering. So it's kind of how I raise my kids, right? I coddle them to a certain age, and then you're on your own. No, I'm joking. They're 21 and 23. They survived. So,
Arzeena,
yeah.
this is Steph here. You have just about 4 or 5 minutes
Okay,
left, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your work specifically with the BC Eco Seed Co-op
sure.
and how that sort of fits in. You described seed as a passion project, but you also do it commercially through this co-op.
Yes,
So I was wondering if you could address that a little
I
bit.
can do that. Sure. I'm
Thank
just
you
going
so
to fast
much.
forward. So I just want to show you, like, I don't grow like a huge variety of seed. I have maybe 20 varieties that I personally am growing. It supplements my income in the winter, but I do sell bulk quantities to the BC Eco Seed Co-op. So in BC, we have this wonderful organization that was started. Dave's on the phone, I think maybe in 2012. And what it enables me to do is to not, as a seed grower, to not have to grow a huge variety of seed. I can concentrate on the seeds that I love to grow, that are my passion, and that I can grow. One of the problems we have on Vancouver Island is that we have wild carrot growing everywhere in the ditches, up, up and down in the verges of the streets. Like, I cannot save carrot seed unless I have some very, tenting, and it's a thing to have to try and save carrot seed here, whereas other growers in the interior of BC do not have the same problem. And so I can concentrate on what I can grow well and what I love to grow, and not have to grow the huge variety. Because, having worked at West Coast Seeds, and, knowing what growers want, like, you want the whole variety. You don't have, like I heard before, you don't want to have to go to like 10 million small seed companies. So that the co-op allows me to just concentrate on what I like to grow. I can send them bulk quantities, and so you don't even have to do the packaging if that's also something that you don't love. So in many ways, it really has helped to overcome the hurdle of growing in quantity, not just for my own farm, but also to sell. Like, you don't have to do CD Saturdays, you don't have to do packet sales. Here is an outlet that you can sell bulk quantities to. And then, if you're a market grower, you can concentrate on just doing the growing, and to let the co-op take care of all of the marketing side of things. So that has been fantastic. Obviously, meeting and knowing all of the different growers. I think, I'll fast forward. The co-op now has 29 farmer members who are growing everything from garlic to, all of the vegetables, herbs, even medicinal herbs. And they then do all of the mail order. They have also, seed in different garden stores across British Columbia, and make sure that they're upkeeping, what's being sold in retail. And so that is all taken care of by the Eco Seed Co-op. My own seed, I actually do not sell off of Vancouver Island. I go to 3 CD Saturdays, and they're just ones within an hour of my community, and that is it. That's all I wanted to do. And, probably because of my time at West Coast Seeds, I did not want to get into the mailing of seed orders and developing a catalog and all of the things that seed companies have to do. So I'm a market grower that has some seed. I didn't want to have to then, start a whole new venture. And that is really what the BC Eco Seed Co-op has enabled, is by collectively, sharing all of the different varieties that we all have. The co-op now has this amazing, huge plethora of varieties that I think is very attractive, both to home gardeners and to growers. And we do have this rule for organic seed production, is that you buy organic seed, and not all of the members are certified organic, but quite a few are. And so it is a wonderful source of regionally adapted certified organic seed. So being part of that co-op has really been helpful for me as a grower, and allows me to concentrate on what I really like to do. So that is actually at the end. I think I've made it in time, hopefully. And yeah, look forward to the questions.
You have. Gold star. Thank you very much. I think next we're going to hear from Christina. Christina, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'm going to share this first slide about the about Kultursaat. Hope that I'm saying that right, and then we can get started, okay?
Yes, again, hello everybody. So I'm part of a network of seed breeders. We are not actually seed savers. There are other organizations who save heritage seeds, as WEN in Germany, or Arche Noah, very known in Austria, or Pro Spezie Rara in Switzerland. They save heritage seeds. And so we didn't only want to save heritage seeds, but in the very beginning, which is 30 years ago, it was clear gene technique started. And if we don't start breeding ourselves, the organic gardeners won't have seeds which are not genetically modified. And the modern hybrids are already genetically modified through the CMS technique and so on. So it was the need of actually facing this concentration of the seed companies worldwide, and face the challenge to develop varieties, OP varieties for the professional market, so that the professional organic gardeners have own organic bred seeds. So this was all in the beginning already the plan. And so 30 years ago, 10 gardeners, Demeter gardeners met and thought, okay, now we have to act ourselves. We start selecting, we start growing the seeds. And a few years later, we could register. In Germany, we have to register our varieties. And so we could register the first varieties, and we had the first small catalog, and then we founded a seed company, the Bingenheimer Saatgut. And Bingenheimer Saatgut has been or is still a home for disabled children and young people. And they started the seed work as a workshop for the handicapped young people. So in the beginning, we got support through this. So the first 5 years, all the wages for the people working with the seeds were paid through the community working with handicapped children. So it was the seed company was first a working place for the disabled children or young people. And so we could slowly build up the company, because in the beginning, of course, you don't earn anything. Yeah, so it was all chef hobby. This breeding activities was chef hobby, and also the seed saving or the seed multiplication. Actually, it was not that we earned a lot with it. So we had to give it in commission to the company, and we got paid when they sold the seeds and so on. So it was in the beginning, and this is what we call the initiative circle. It is actually in the beginning, breeders and gardeners and seed multipliers, it was all the same. So it was gardeners who started to breed, and it was the breeders, gardeners who multiplied the seeds. In the beginning, it was all this. So it was also our vision that gardeners know what kind of varieties they want to have. They know what is the best plant to take, because they have to sell it, and what you can sell, you can select. So we wanted to build up on the experience of the gardeners, and so we wanted to make gardeners to become breeders, and this is still our aim, or is how we work. So a few of us also studied agriculture or horticulture, but the basic is always we are gardeners, we are vegetable growers. We have the experience of vegetable growing, and out of this we start breeding them. So we founded Kultursaat as an association, and after 10 years, when we registered the first varieties, we could say to some foundations, look what we have done. We have already registered 20 varieties. Can you support us? And after 10 years, we got a support. And so can you see this here? Don't know. And so in the beginning, the breeding was chef hobby. And now we have more and more full-time breeders. So I'm one of the full-time breeders. But we have still also that gardeners implement the breeding in their gardening. But who more professional we got in the breeding, and who more professional the seed company got in processing the seeds and selling the seeds, who more it was clear that we really had to concentrate on the breeding, and it's just not something you do first, of course, always in the garden and the vegetable growing, and then you do your breeding work, and this does not work in the long run. So now we turned it the other way around. The breeding work comes first. And this is possible because we get the donations and we can finance this people who are full-time breeders. So we have the breeders on 30 sites in all around Germany. Then we have the seed camp, and then we have our association. We are all connected through this association. And then we have the seed company, Bingenheimer Saatgut, who after 10 years, within this home for disabled children, it was clear we have to found an extra company. So we founded this company. And we have partners in Switzerland, which is Sativa, and in Austria, which is Rheinsaat. And we exchange varieties, and also we buy seeds from each other. So some varieties, Sativa is multiplying, some Rheinsaat, and then some we multiply, and then we can exchange and sell the varieties to each other. And also Rheinsaat is selling in Austria and a bit in the Slovenia and Czech Republic, and we are selling in Germany and Northern Europe and to England, and Sativa is doing also Switzerland and France and Italy and so on. So we, in this way we cover a bit Europe. And the seed company, they collect the seeds, they organize the multiplication, and they organize also 2 seed meetings in a year. One in the summer, it's a multipliers meeting, and one in the autumn, it's more an organizationing meeting. And the plant breeders meet extra in January, our big breeders meeting. And also we have crop groups for every crop, carrots and cabbage and broccoli and tomatoes and so on. And the crop groups also meet during the season, looking at each other's crops and exchanging experiences and discussing breeding techniques and how we go on with different varieties. And so the question this is how we organize ourselves, and of course more and more the Bingenheimer Saatgut as a company took over the organization because they know what they can sell and they know where are gaps. So they say, we have a gap here, can you breed this? Can you start breeding with this? So every crop group is also asked to look what they breed. Is it also what the Bingenheimer Seed Company wants to have? Because if we already have 20 varieties of tomatoes and they concentrate on another 50, we never will sell this. So then it's better, perhaps if it's a gap with aubergine, to go over to aubergine or peppers or something. And the same if we have 10 varieties of early carrots, but nothing for industry, then it doesn't make sense to breed more on early carrots, but to look if we can breed carrots for industrial use also. So this is what Bingenheim organizes, and and so this is a network working together and supporting each other and exchanging and so on. So, and very important is also the customers as well, and also the multipliers that we can give their seeds for trials. So if you have a variety, the procedure is, it goes first, we test it intern. So if you know gardeners and you've asked, can you test my variety? I think it's good, try it. And then they hopefully, often it doesn't work, but hopefully they give a feedback. And then I can collect the feedbacks and give it to the seed company. And if I have a lot of good feedbacks, then I can say to the seed company, look, this variety, others also think it's good. Would you like to give it to your customers to try? Then they give it to their customers, and if the reactions are good, then they take it over into the catalog, because then we go and register it, and then they start to multiply it and put it in the catalog. And the plant breeders, they look for the basic seeds. They give the basic seeds to the Bingenheimer Saatgut, to the seed company, and the seed company is organizing the multiplication. So we have about 80 to 100 farmers who multiply the seeds, also in France and Spain and Egypt, and because we need warm climate for some crops, which we don't have in Germany. Especially northern Germany is actually not suitable to multiply a lot of varieties. And so we need the south. And so this is all Bingenheim is doing. And they also, of course, process the seeds, that they have a good technical quality as well. Because we can only sell seeds more than 85% germination, and most of the seeds are also calibrated. So the technical quality has to be very, very, very good. Otherwise, we can't sell to the professional market. Yeah, are there questions to this network?
I have a question, Christina, and others, please feel free to pop them into the chat. We have a little bit of time before Christina's time is up. But this is such a wonderful and kind of complex network in terms of what you've shared with us. Can you give us a sense of like how the existence of the initiative circle has kind of impacted organic and biodynamic agriculture in the areas where you work?
So the Kultursaat has, since 10 years, we have a sort of education where people who are interested in becoming a seed breeder can do a 2 years training. It's once in a month, a weekend, with courses and on different breeding farms, where they can learn from the existing breeders how to do it. And then they can become also a breeder in our club, to say. And we started biodynamic, and up to now, all the breeders are biodynamic. So this is our basic, and this is also what we, it has been our basic, and I don't know if it will be in the future, because the young people, they all work biodynamic, but their background is not anthroposophical anymore, which is otherwise in my age, we are all have an anthroposophical background or training also. So our basic is the agricultural course of Rudolf Steiner, and there's a lot of, for me, there's a lot of inspiration in it. And all the, and I think, that it's not enough just to fill the gap for the professional gardeners to have suitable varieties. Of course, there is still a gap. There's still some crops we didn't cover, as broccoli is still difficult, and I think probably it's not possible to reach what hybrids are can do with open pollinated variety, the same with cauliflower and Brussels sprouts. This is just crops which are difficult and remain difficult. If you have this aim on 100% homogeneity and harvesting within 1 week, yeah? If you don't have this aim, then the varieties are perfect. Yeah, if you have this aim, then we have a problem. Yeah, and perhaps it's not a problem. Yeah, perhaps how we do agriculture and gardening is a problem, and not the breeding is a problem. Yeah, but I think the main problem we face, and this is what Steiner told us 100 years ago, that we have to breed not only new varieties, but new crops, because the old crops won't be good anymore for nutrition. So if you look at the incompatibilities, how you say, gluten, if people can't have gluten and lactose intolerances, yes. Look at the intolerances, and we all also already face fructose intolerance, so people can't have fruits and vegetables anymore. And if people have all these intolerances, you can only eat nuts, yeah, and the rest is intolerant. So actually all our old cultural crops, people get intolerant. So what had happened, yeah? So for me, it's much more the questions not on mass, on quantity. Of course, my varieties are high yielding and I look that they are good for the professional market. But actually, I think the question of quantity, probably already over 20 years, nobody will speak anymore about quantity because we have a lack on quality. People can't digest the food anymore. They have a problem to find something they can eat. This is the problem. And not if we have 1 ton more or less in the harvest. Yeah, we have a quality problem. So it's, for me, and this is not the whole of Kultursaat, I'm speaking about me now. For me, it's the main question, how to improve the quality. How can I change my breeding technique? What can I implement more? And what can I give to my crops that they are better to digest? That they extend their nutritional quality, that they extend their forming forces which feed us. So how can I cultivate wild plants into cultural ones to have new crops? So, and this is much more also a question of breeding technique. And I think that all people a lot of them want to use gene techniques. I think I can understand this because the human can become a creator, and they try to be creative, only in a way which is not so suitable or not so appropriate to the plant. Yeah, it's under nature. So, but how can we develop techniques? How can we, in which way we can work with plants that we are also creative, that we face what is gene techniques doing in the one side, we have to develop in the other side. That they develop in under nature, we have to develop in the spiritual, in the etherical. Yeah, so one can also say that they have such a big that they are so big and so huge is because we are so small. Yeah, we have to take the space. We have to develop into this space, into this creative space. I think this is the task, the really task of organic biodynamic plant breeding in future, now and in future. Yeah, to be as creative as the gene technique people, but in a spiritual way, to fill the gap, to take our space, and to develop future crops for future human beings. This is actually the question. This is what for me, I'm 60 now or 61, so I bred my varieties which are good for the professional markets, and now the quality question is more and more, was always urgent for me, but it becomes more and more urgent. So if you ask why biodynamic, I think biodynamic provides us with ideas, with inspiration. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm going to uplift one of these questions from the chat, and hopefully we'll come back to the others in our question period. But you mentioned that there's a lot of meetings that happen within the organization that you're part of. Outside of the meetings, the question from Rania is how do you manage all the cogs of the system? Is there a software like shared spreadsheets or task management software in order to stay on the same page? Is there specific seed or farming software that you use? Can you shed a little light on that?
We have, I would say, unfortunately, or perhaps not, we have a software. Yeah. We have a software specially written or installed for us. So where we put in all the crops, and every breeder put in his crops or her crops, and also we have to write reports every year, and reports go into the our software, and also the process of breeding, the system of breeding, the outcome, the results every year, and also the budgeting. So we have to make a budget. What does it cost every year? Because then we get money for this. So everything is in this software. Yeah. And so if I want to, and it's online, it's all connected. So if I want to know, who else, of course I know who else is, for example, breeding broccoli, and if I have a question, I can check how he's doing it. Or I don't use this. If I have a question, I call the person. Yeah. And we meet anyway 2-3 times a year, and then we can speak to each other, and we have our crop groups meeting. So I personally don't use this software. For me, it's not necessary, but it's necessary for the head of our Kultursaat association. He's using it, of course. And if he wants to look things, or also the seed company, they can look into it, and if they want to know something. But for us, I think it's still more that we phone with each other if we have a question, and but everything, and perhaps it's more interesting perhaps for people in 10 or 20 years, then they can check. If I'm not there anymore, they can check what has she done or so, if they want. If it's still interesting, I don't know. Perhaps it's not interesting anymore then, but.
And do you know the name of the software that you referenced, or is it like a custom?
It's especially developed for us, so it's
okay.
But of course, you could copy it if you want. I think we don't have something against it, but the problem with the software is that there comes a sort of spirit with this software, which is not supporting what actually our spirit should be. And this is the problem. So people look much more in the details of the software, and if you had done the clicks right, then after the idea which is after it, and this I find a problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. There's lots of questions for you in the chat that I hope we'll have time to circle back to. For now, I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to invite you, Owen, to begin yours and tell us a little bit about your work.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to present with all of you. I have a PowerPoint, and I'm hoping that the spirit of this software does not squash the spirit of my presentation. I really was inspired by your free-flowing presentation, Christina. And so I will start here. This is some faces of TrueLove seeds. And, for us, what is most important is the stories in the seeds, the culture in the seeds, and the connections that those form between people. And so, again, we're based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States. And I'm going to move forward here. Here's one of our growers gatherings, maybe similar to Christina, meetings that they have. Once a year, we invite all of our growers. We work with 70 farmers across the US who grow their ancestral seeds for our seed catalog. And this is a couple years ago, and some of the people who were able to make it to our gathering. And because, some of our growers are 3,000 miles away, and we're really dispersed, only so many people show up. But these are some of the more regional growers that we work with and local partners. So our seed company, again, was started in 2017. We are now located in the Germantown neighborhood of Philadelphia where we live, and this is where many of us live. And this is the seed room where those 70 farms send their seeds to be stored and packed into packets. And this is Maeve Aguilar, who's our seed collection manager and office manager. This is another room where we pack our seeds into packets. And here's an example of the Efoshoco that I mentioned earlier as my favorite seed today. And I wanted to show you also it at the flower show. This is this week at the Philadelphia Flower Show. The high school students, grew these in their high school and put them in this exhibit that won gold medal this week. So I wanted to just show you my favorite seed. Okay, so this is me as a teenager, maybe in the late 90s, in my vegetable garden in northeastern Connecticut, just to ground us in where it all started, at least in my lifetime. I was of course inspired by grandmothers and aunties before this, but this is where I got my start in growing vegetables. But TrueLove Seeds is really founded in the food sovereignty movement, which is an international movement. And I guess I hate reading off a screen, but I want to read this. Food sovereignty is the right of peoples to a healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems. And this is from 2007. I worked for over 20 years with different food justice and food sovereignty organizations, and that included especially 7 years in New York City with an organization called Just Food, where I managed the City Farms programs and worked with community gardeners and farmers throughout the 5 boroughs of the city who were reclaiming land, had been doing so since sometimes close to 100 years, but usually since what we call white flight and disinvestment. So the movement of people with resources, which was often white people, out of the cities into the suburbs, kind of leaving behind vacant lands and disinvestment in general. And so I was really blessed to work with incredible people who had seen opportunity in those vacancies and created these oases of food growing and community organizing and culture. And that's kind of the foundation of my work with food and community. So when I moved to the Philadelphia area, I was a community organizer with a public interest law firm, and I was focusing on, go back a second here, focusing on helping to preserve those formerly vacant, now highly utilized spaces in Philadelphia that are suddenly very valuable to developers. And that was really a great way for me to get to know the Philadelphia community gardening world. At the same time, it was a part-time job, and I got this other part-time job with Dr. William Moyes Weaver, who I'd never heard of before, but it completely shifted my work into the world of seeds. He inherited his grandfather's seed collection, which was started in 1932. And by the time I met him, he had 4,000 varieties of heirloom seeds in the collection. And especially in the 1990s, he was offering hundreds and hundreds of varieties in the Seed Savers Exchange catalog, like the yearbook, where people could offer their own backyard grown seeds to each other. And he just would walk me through his garden, which is like on an acre old, like historic inn, and all these raised beds. And we could spend an entire day with him just telling stories of each seed that we encountered, the histories and the people that they came from. And it just opened up a whole world to me, someone who'd been working with plants my entire life, to see the kind of portals that each plant kind of welcomed you into through the stories within them. And so this is outside of Philadelphia. I worked for 4 years with Dr. Weaver. I quit my other job and became full-time helping to manage his seed collection. We started selling seeds through our own website and through 2 other companies, Hudson Valley Seed Company and Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, 2 connections that he had. And so I got to learn both the art and science of seed saving, but also how to scale it up to be able to sell to seed companies. And by the end of 4 years, my partner and I really wanted, I'm going to move here. This is my partner, Chris, in the middle. We really wanted to start our own project focused on heirloom seeds and open pollinated seeds, but really where it's people stewarding their own ancestral seeds. Because at Roughwood Seed Collection with Dr. Weaver, we were kind of like a living museum, and we had seeds from all over the world, and it was really cool. But having been in the food sovereignty movement, working in community with people who were growing their most important crops for their communities, I thought it was an opportunity to bring a focus on seed production to our communities that we've been working with for so long. And so TrueLove Seeds really was created as a way to partner with farms who were doing that and to invest kind of our mentorship and to support their seed production through offering them a sales outlet. And so most of the food sovereignty movement is funded by donations and philanthropy. And so having had worked in nonprofits for so long, I wanted to try out a model that was not a nonprofit, but instead funded by farmers and gardeners instead of philanthropists and wealthy people and foundations. And so that's why we took the shape of a seed company. But we really didn't know how to be a seed company, and we just made it our own. And so at Chris's farm, he runs a farm in Southwest Philadelphia. He's one of the directors, called Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram's Garden. It's the first botanic garden in the United States. And they have many acres where they focus on African diasporic seed crops. It's primarily Black run, and they have Black interns from the local high schools, and they have a community garden that they steward. And he always had an African diaspora garden at the center of the farm where people could come and learn about the crops, both from West Africa, and where most African Americans originate through the slave trade, and also crops of the American South and Mid-Atlantic that would be familiar to African Americans. And this was a huge inspiration to our focus at TrueLove Seeds. And so one of our first seed collections was the African Diaspora collection. So to my story, just a little bit, I don't want to stay here too long, but I'm Irish and Italian primarily, and also, Ashkenazi Jewish and English and some other things. But I knew my Italian ancestors, and I am mostly Irish. And so the first time that I really connected with my own ancestry was at Roughwood Seed Collection with the lumper potato, which was the potato that was primarily grown before, during, and after the Great Hunger on Gortamore in Ireland. And so this was the time when I was, digging up my first crop of lumper potatoes, when I was like, oh my gosh, this is bringing me to my great-grandmother's farm when she was a child, where they grew potatoes on Galway Bay. And it just was a profound experience for me and really rooted me in this work. And that's my great-grandmother, Mary Lenahan. And then, I knew my Italian great-grandparents here who kept Italian garden, and their parents kept Italian gardens. And so I started growing the crops that I knew my ancestors grew, and those that I didn't know, because they worked really hard for us to become American, become white American, and not Italian identified. And so we lost a lot in that process, and obviously gained a lot as well. But I'm trying to recover what was lost. And so we started growing canning tomatoes. I make 50 quarts a year of sauce. And here's my great-grandmother's parents, who also are on record of having these big Italian gardens. And so trying to grow the things that I can scrounge up from historical documents. But where it really became meaningful to me was meeting Mary Maniti here. She runs the Italian Garden Project out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she's been meeting with Italian Americans for the last 15 years and collecting seeds and fig tree cuttings and stories and videos. And I heard her on a podcast and reached out, and now we're working really closely. And she actually just came a couple weeks ago and brought us her legacy fig tree collection that we rooted together at our greenhouse. So we'll preserve 9 of her most important Italian American fig trees. But we've also been growing for several years seeds from the various older Italian folks she meets. And many of them have passed away, including Sabatino here. And so, like my family, the tradition's not getting passed down usually. And so Mary and I and some friends of ours are trying to become, the people who are carrying forward the Italian American garden traditions together. So beyond my story, we work a lot with immigrant farmers. And here's just some of them. Again, we have 70 growers that we work with. And not all of our growers are immigrants or refugees, but everyone focuses on their ancestral seeds in some way. I'm going to move forward to some of the refugee farmers that we work with. We work really closely with the woman on the left, who's part of a Vietnamese refugee project called Viet Lead near Philadelphia and Camden, New Jersey. And then the Karen refugees here from Burma, we've worked with since our very first year as well. And we just have a very deep relationship where we visit each other's farms every year. They come and harvest at our farm, which is here in Philadelphia also. It's a couple acres. I didn't mention that. And we go to their farm. They've taught us how to clean seeds the way they would clean rice in the jungles with the woven baskets. And we grow crops that they're not able to save seeds from at their farm because their community is robust and they are very excited to eat all of their crops and don't save any for seeds. And so we have a relationship where we save the seeds, but they teach us about the crops and how to save the seeds. And I'll say too that in the very beginning, Viet Lead, which is where Kofang is from, and the Karen refugees were at a farm called Novik Community Farm, and several other farms came together to dream up what TrueLove seeds would become. So we wanted to have other culturally rooted farms at the table to imagine what does a seed project look like that'll really honor our elders' stories and honor our community stories and be useful to the work that we're all trying to do around food and culture and seeds. And so that's a little introduction to TrueLove Seeds, and I welcome any questions about any of that.
Thank you so much, Owen. That was really lovely. Yeah, what a great community. Yeah, for sure. I have a question, and then we will, I think, open it up to questions for everyone. I wondered if you could, I don't know, just comment a little bit on how you consider scale in your work with TrueLove Seeds.
Like I said earlier, we never tried to be follow a seed company model. We just wanted to be an outlet for people's traditional seeds so people could find in a reliable way the seeds that remind them of home without having to smuggle them or something, And so we wanted it to be the things that were most important to be available and to have that support members of their diaspora. A lot of companies have a wide variety of what people might call exotic, but we call it culturally important because they're not exotic to the people who love them. But what makes our company different is that those profits are going to the growers. We started out by giving 50% of our sale back to the growers, and we lasted about 8 years with that. And in the last couple of years, we lowered it to 30% so we could kind of stop having deficits and be more sustainable. And luckily, our growers understood. And but we do. So we don't have a full catalog. Like you can't come to our catalog and get like your carrot and your broccoli and, you come for what we have and you'll have to supplement it elsewhere. And sometimes the packet sizes might be small for like a big commercial grower. And so they wouldn't come to us for everything. They'd come to us for the things they can't find anywhere else. And we have had an issue of scale that's been important to us because for us, we're not trying to be everything to everybody. But where it does matter is where our packet quantities are not culturally appropriate. And so, especially with many West African growers and East African growers, they're like, okay, we're not going to buy 25 seeds of this thing that we plant thousands of seeds at a time for in a 4x8 bed, So there's like cut and come again greens. We had, I guess, the packet sizes were too small for them to be culturally relevant. Like people just wouldn't order them. And so we have created bulk size packages for many of our African greens, for example, to kind of meet the need and be legible to those customers. And so that's where scale has been really important to us. We do, of course, need to stay afloat as a company. And so we want to make our customers happy. And so we recognize the varieties that are really important to people and try really hard to have backup growers or many growers of those so that we don't run out for a whole year and keep that available. But those are my thoughts on the scale.
Thank you so much. You're getting so many accolades in the chat. It's really lovely.
Oh,
I think
sweet.
regardless of the size of your seed packets, the scale of your impacts in the communities that you partner with are huge. And thank you so much for sharing that work with us. I am going to return to a screen share. I don't know, Becca, if you want to help me navigate some of the questions in the chat. I think we have possibly a couple for Christina while I get my slides back up.
Sure. There's a question here for you, Christina. Could you provide examples of wild or cultivated species that you think need to be subject of improved breeding to deal with the quality and intolerance that customers have? You mentioned some of these orphan crops, but curious to hear more about what those are.
Again, the question.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of some of the the non-standard crops that the wild crops that you think need improving?
Now, actually, most improvement need the cereals. Yeah, this is the most intolerance with cereals. So I started to create, or I created a seed treatment to extend the forming forces of the crops, of the different cereal crops and also the vegetable crops. And then they are already much better digestible for the people. And then I started to breed now with dandelion, with quickroot, with grasses, with chicken millet. So I have different crops I make now. Yeah, it's a research question how to deal with this wild plants. And it's really a question what kind of breeding techniques we can use. Or actually, it's a very basic question. How will a wild crop become a cultural one? Because this is 6,000 years ago when the cultural plants developed, and we didn't know how they did it. Yes, it was probably a very cultic priest magic thing. They created wild crops into cultural ones, and we don't know how they did it. And now we are 6,000 years further, so we have to create our own new ways of dealing with the plants. And this is just research question. And I work with a little group. We work on this question. We have different approaches, different methods, how we can change crops. And this works, but it's just the beginning. And I'd really like to have more people. There are very, very, not many people working on this question. So I think it's very important that we create new breeding methods to extend qualities and to form new crops.
It's amazing that you're talking about this because in the pre-registration question, someone also brought up how do we bring in nutrition into the sort of the matrix that we use when we're doing breeding, and how do we value the nutrition of crops in this world that might not always do that.
Yeah.
So
Now,
thank you for that.
Yeah, but one thing, of course, just back to basic, is we select everything on taste.
Yeah.
So no seed plant goes into the in the soil which I didn't test it before. So every carrot I select on form, of course. I cut it open and look at the color, and then I taste every carrot I plant.
Yeah.
And only the good tasting ones I plant, and they make seeds. And this is with every crop. No crop is grown without tasting before. And then you improve, of course, the taste, but the taste is of course a very holistic property. Yeah, in the taste you have a lot. If a carrot tastes very, very good, it's not only sweet, but also it has a character, it has a sort of nuttiness and an aroma and things like this. So in the taste you have everything, actually everything. And if a crop is wholesome, it tastes good, and in the taste you can also feel the wholesomeness. So this goes into the selection, and then you improve already also the nutritional quality, just with selection on taste. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Christina.
I'm seeing just one other question in the chat, unless Becca, you wanted to lift one up from the pre-registration questions. Did you have one in mind, or shall I go ahead?
I have one that might be good as sort of a broader topic, like sort of for everyone. I have a question that came in. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you all on this topic. So we have so many lovely people who have joined this webinar and the series in general, but we're finding often that it's people that have already initiated a curiosity around seeds. So the question is, how do you talk to market growers, those professional growers, about the value of the work that you each do in different capacities, breeding, offering culturally relevant crops, doing this in community in terms of a co-op? What do you say to bring in the planters of the seed into seeing this as an alternative to some of the issues of a global seed system?
I'll maybe start. One of the things that we do have here in BC and, through Farm Folk, City Folk is a mentorship program. So I think a lot of market gardeners are maybe, curious about like how to even add seed saving into their already busy systems. And so, talking to other growers and just seeing how it's possible and, where like physically and in time that's done. A lot of that has to come from mentorship from other growers and like really highlighting how, and I think all of the speakers talked about this, how important it is to have a diverse set of growers for all kinds of reasons, climate, resilience, and just having like really highlighting how each grower brings something really special to the table, and that we're not trying to homogenize what everybody's growing. Like you each, even if we're growing the same variety, the seed that I'm saving on Vancouver Island is probably very different from the seed that's in the Kootenays. And that we don't lose that diversity when you come together. It just strengthens what we do already. But I think mentorship is really important for folks that aren't necessarily into seed saving yet. So a lot of field days, like open houses, inviting growers to your farm to see what seed saving actually looks like.
I worked on a farm in my hometown in Connecticut. Actually, it was biodynamic a couple times, and they started saving seeds because there were varieties disappearing from catalogs, but also and they wanted to keep having them available, but also because they were developing kind of northern adapted strains of crops that are winter hardy. They grow all 12 seasons. And so they would select with huge die-offs in the beginning, but eventually 100% survival rate for certain greens that went into their salad mixes. And so for them, it was an economic decision because they developed their own varieties, but then they also were very expensive species to buy in bulk. And so it was cheaper for them to save them on their farm. So there's economic reasons. There's also the economic reasons of, starting to sell to a seed company is a diversified income source. And so that's kind of what brought in a lot of the growers that we work with. But I think these rational reasons are not as powerful as what happens when you ask somebody what seed tells their story. When I ask farmers what seed reminds you of your grandmother's kitchen, it's suddenly a very interesting question to people that makes them very motivated to consider saving seeds, because you're not just growing food or growing seeds, but you're growing memories and meaning and belonging. And so for us, I think that's how we've kind of brought people into our network, and we've really have to stop. We can't keep bringing in more farmers. It's too many to manage, but how we try to inspire other people to get into seed saving is by growing the story of who they are and who their community is through the plants that they save seeds from and share seeds from.
I think for a lot of the farmers, the motivation is that they see the whole of the plant. So if you have 2 years crops, or mostly you don't see the seeds. Don't see the crop flowering. And so if you have a carrot, you never see it flowering. If you have a cabbage, you never see it flowering, making seeds. And for a lot of them, it was, wow, this is the whole cyclus. Now I have the plant in the whole. So this is one motivation, and then there comes a lot of political motivation, so that we are dependent on the hybrid, we are dependent on the big companies, and it's a strong political motivation to have this network of independence. And I think also I've been in India a year ago, and there it's just a question of survival. Yeah, if they don't act themselves, if they don't start saving their own seeds, multiplying it, they just can't buy this expensive seeds of the big companies. So I think, this political motivation is also very strong. And now we have this deregulation of gene techniques. So if we don't act ourselves, we won't get seeds which are not genetically modified. So it's a question of survival. If you don't want this. And
I feel like you've touched on so many things in there: the agronomics, the political, and of course the cultural, and this like the spirit in a way. Christina, you brought up that aspect of it, and Owen, I think that the work that you do too, it touches on that, like that the reminder of your grandmother's table has that it plays on the feelings of it so well, and yet this aspect of seed connects with all those other aspects as well. I know, like for me, I have behind me different varieties of crops that have come from grandparents because of that one question you asked, Owen, like to me, like 15 years ago, like that. So yeah, it can impact people greatly, and I hope that we can continue bringing seeds to all of these different aspects of the way that farmers think. Yeah. Over to you, Steph.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all three of our presenters, Christina, Arzeena, and Owen. You shared so generously from your knowledge. Thanks, Becca, for managing our Zoom issues and all of our Q&A and tech aspects. We hope that you will join us for our next webinar in this series. It's a collaboration with the National Farmers Union and their NF University series. It's called Growing Seed Sovereignty, Farmers, Seed Policy, and the Common Good, and it's coming up next week, March 12th. In that space, we're going to continue exploring and learning together about seeds and community with speakers Abir Day from Seed Change and Kathy Holzlander from the NFU. That should be a wonderful event. Thank you so much again to our presenters and to all of you for your time and engagement. You can learn more about our work, explore resources, and connect with staff members by going to the websites or the socials on the slides. Thanks very much, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll talk to you next time.